Norfolk Public School District's Board of Education meeting is called to order. Roll call.
Tammy Day is on Zoom but cannot participate in the meeting, so technically she's absent. Dr. Patty Googles.
Present.
Bruce Mitchell.
Here.
Arnie Robinson. Bob Wake.
Present.
Sandy Wolf.
Present.
We do have a quorum.
Is there a motion to approve the absence of Tammy Day?
I so move.
I'll second.
We have a motion by Bruce and a second by Patty. Any discussion? Please vote.
Motion carried 5-0.
Thank you, Mary. This is a legal meeting of the Board of Education as advertised by the means specified in board policy. A complete copy of the Opens Meeting Act is posted in the boardroom for your review. A copy of the agenda is available at the desk of the recording secretary. Okay, we are to COVID-19 Return to School Planning Committee.
Thank you. We have had a committee of teachers, principals, central office administrators, parents, and support staff meeting to develop a framework for the return of students to our buildings in a manner that maximizes student safety and learning. We have several of our committee members here today, so I would like to take a moment to recognize those who are here, and I can't necessarily see everybody, so if I miss you, please yell at me. How's that? So, Dr. Bill Robinson, Angie Bauman, Mary Luer, Beth Nelson, Eric Wilson, Ben Reese, Jennifer Robinson, Ryan Specht, Tricia Andreessen, Sarah Dittmer, Haven Pedersen, Blair Brink, Kim Erickson. Who am I missing? Alicia Rumans, parent, Chuck Foxhoven, Heidi Korth, Carrie Cronin. I think I got everybody who is here, but there were lots of other people involved in the process too. And we were very careful to create a committee that had representation from all levels, from preschool to senior high, tried to be as representative of our overall population as we possibly could. And I just really want to thank this team. They spent countless hours reviewing information from the Elkhorn-Logan Valley Public Health Department, the Nebraska Department of Education, the Center for Disease Control, and just trying to determine how best to safely reopen our schools. And they have drafted a plan with that information in mind, but also the specifics of our buildings, our staff, and our students. In a minute, I will have each subcommittee chair briefly, or as briefly as they can, address the plans for their specific area, knowing that board members have had access to the entire plan and have read through that. And then you'll obviously have the opportunity to talk to the chairperson or any of the other representatives that you would like to ask questions. When all of the subcommittees have finished, then I will share some additional information with you regarding masks. And then when we're finished with our presentation, we'll go to the next item, which then is a board action item, and you can have your further discussion about the entire plan. So, our entire plan is based upon the Elkhorn-Logan Valley Public Health Department's 4-tier risk dial, which is on page 8 of your plan. When you look at it, green level is low or stable risk within the community. So the plans that are developed for that level have all students in our buildings getting face-to-face learning with a variety of safety precautions in place. The yellow level is a moderate risk level for the community. At that level, we would still be able to have all of our students in buildings with more safety precautions in place. And I'm not going to go through those now. That's what the subcommittees will do. If we get to the orange level, that's considered an elevated risk within the community, and at that point, we would need to go to a hybrid model where we only have half of our students in the building at a time. So some students would receive in person on one day, and the other half would get online or remote learning that day, and we would switch back and forth. If we get to a red status, which we are all hoping we don't, that is a high or severe risk within the community, and at that point we would need to go to full remote learning. It's very important for us to be aligned to this risk dial so that we can adjust quickly if the COVID level changes within our community, which it is likely to do throughout the school year. The Elkhorn-Logan Valley Public Health Department is planning to release their community risk level every Thursday, and then we would make changes accordingly if needed. At this exact point in time, we are in the yellow level, which is the moderate risk level, which would mean we could have all of our students come back to school for face-to-face instruction with a variety of safety precautions in place, which we will discuss in a moment. Are there any questions about that basic before I turn it over to our subcommittees to start talking about what those plans actually entail?
Amy Jo, could you just describe the criteria that the public health department uses to move from one level to the next? Is that the CDC?
I don't have that information in front of me. It was in the Norfolk Daily News yesterday. They have 8 different criteria. Some of it is the number of cases, some is the capacity of the hospital, some is whether cases percent of positive is going up or down, and it's based on CDC and other factors too. That Norfolk Daily News article really spelled that out very well yesterday, I thought. Okay, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Robinson then. He has the Facilities and Operations Subcommittee. His report will be the longest, I have no doubt. And it's not the first one in your book. When we get done with his, we just go through in order, but I felt it was important to start with that topic first.
Thank you, Dr. Thompson. Can everybody hear? The lapel on? Okay, good. As already stated, we had a large committee, and then we divided into subcommittees on these topics. Facility and operations is a big topic because you have to go through and define and strategize how your operations and your facilities are going to look to have school in conjunction with the massive instructional component that goes with it. So they go side by side. So when we dove into this, we divided into actual subcommittees within the subcommittee to attack those grade levels. So Ryan Specht and Trish Andreessen are here. They helped lead that elementary look, pre-K-4. Dr. Jen Robinson, she helped lead the middle level. And then John Irwin was not able to be here today in conjunction with Ben Reese and the senior high staff helped with leading the 9-12 discussion. And then they met separately. We came together for these recommendations. Lots of detail within these recommendations. What we're sharing today is just the big picture format. They're here if there's more questions about that. We thought to keep it moving, the general public and everybody's really interested, okay, how are you going to open? What's it going to look like? A lot of that big basic stuff, and that's what we're going to go through. We have it segmented in facility and operations in several goals, so we'll go through each of those. So if you have a question about something, you might get it answered as we move through the other goals. And then at the end, open the questions and so forth. Some of our committees cross-pollinated a little bit. You'll hear maybe the same message in another group because they interact and so forth. So if I say something another committee is going to say, that isn't done intentionally. It's just because we're doing the same thing kind of with some different details. For those of you with the books in front of you, if you would turn to page 14. And that's where we'll start. I'll scroll to that on the screen. And we're going to start with school schedule. Dr. Thompson already mentioned when we're at green level, yellow, orange, and red, essentially what that means. So I'll reemphasize that. When we're at green, which is the low stable risk level, we definitely are recommending that we have 100% students on site for face-to-face learning because we are in a low risk environment. But we do have still some procedures we want to discuss. The main one, and you're going to see this throughout, is as students come to school, we're going to have designated entrances at all levels. And at those levels, we're going to do temperature checks and health screenings. And those screenings will be documented. We have done this on a modified, smaller basis already with some of our summer weightlifting and activities at the senior high. Worked through some of those things. We feel we have a pretty fluid system. Now, have we done this with the entire district? No. And there'll be some talk later on about those things as well. But we feel pretty good we have a very fluid system that the principals can implement so kids aren't waiting forever. We're doing that initial screening. We still want to do it at green. And here's the main rationale. Our leadership and our teachers really felt students thrive in routine. And if we start a routine like that, unless we are completely out of pandemic, we just need to keep it going throughout. Because as this dial moves around and so forth, that's very confusing to everybody. It's like, okay, are we yellow or green or whatever? Am I checked or not checked? Let's just keep checking until we're done with risk levels entirely. And we got a pretty quick process developed. And so that's a strong recommendation from this committee is to keep that throughout. Because even on a low risk level, the CDC is still saying you got to kind of watch what's going on. So let's do that initial screening and so forth. We know it's not 100% foolproof, but we're going through that at the doors. One of the thermometer that we will use is this one here. It's a touchless, pretty basic. Scan the forehead. It takes, no more than 5 to 8 seconds, and you're good to go. And then each building has some ways of documenting the other screening factors. The secondary, kids carry their IDs. Either they'll have an electronic version on their iPhone or the physical one. We have barcode scanners, and the elementaries have a process as well because kids don't carry ID cards at those levels. But it'll be pretty fluid. So that's that part. We still want to minimize, the spread of the virus as much as possible, even in a low risk. So we're still going to follow our sanitation schedules. We still are going to practice social distancing to the best levels we can with 100% students coming into the building. So as far as the school schedule is concerned, though, when you look at an elementary, you can look up there. It's, we got students can travel as normal with advanced disinfecting. So our resource title teachers, they can stay in their rooms with one grade level at a time so they can disinfect after each group. Our small groups at an elementary was something that's a concern. That's how you teach reading. That's how you do math. That's how you do a lot of other things. But how do we do that? So here's an example. We have these ordered. They should be here for the first day of school. You've probably seen these at other places. It's a portable desk divider. They set up on a desk like this. Well, that was good. I didn't plan for that pandemic. So, but this is a pretty easy thing and it's flexible. You can adjust it. The Haven Pedersen was the lead on that with our K4 team. I appreciate that. A lot of companies are out there doing stuff. We felt this fit our needs and so forth. So this is what we have, and it'll be coming, and they're easy to sanitize. Plain flat, pretty easy, and we feel we can get the school year out of them too. Some of that stuff that first came out was basically cardboard with cellophane, and that's not going to last more than a couple weeks. So it's got some durability as well. These dividers can also be used at the middle level and secondary building in some unique circumstances there as well. But primarily we were like, okay, how are we going to do these small groups with K4s? And so we felt like we have a solution and a recommendation to that. When you get to the middle level in the secondary, pretty much the schedule follows as a normal schedule would be. Junior high's got some procedures with some one-way trafficking and so forth. Some of you who may went to junior high, I'll say back in the day when Mr. Rector was here, they had the up hallway, down hallway. I think Dr. Robinson's pulled out that old book and maybe using that format, so that kind of thing will be happening. And then the high schools talked about some trafficking at their building as well. Because you get to the bigger buildings, it's, how do you handle the movement with practicing social distancing the best you can with everybody present. So, subcommittee leaders, did I miss anything that you want to chime in on with green? Okay. When we get to yellow, okay, we're at yellow today. So let's take a look at that. We're still doing those same screenings and so forth. We're doing those designated classroom and hallway procedures for staff and students that we're establishing day one. Now in the elementary, we're going to separate classroom groups a little more with our morning meetings, our specials, our lunch and recess. Specials will look different. We got some in the classrooms. It's going to be a little more segmented and defined, and it's just to help with that social distancing aspect of things. We will follow traditional schedules both at the senior high level and the middle level. Because of how they want to supervise, they're asking teachers be in their room by 7:45. In the high school's got some plans with supervision as well. But the biggest difference is at the high school level, they're going to have a kind of an in-between bell. Normal dismissal, the bell rings and the student body gets up and moves. They're going to adjust that so they get that half and half. So like first bell rings, group A will go. So you get about 600 movement. Then another bell will ring, a kind of an in-between bell, tweaky bell, and then the group B goes. Kids will know if they're A or B. And this will play in on a little higher level as we move into orange, this A and B grouping. So that's how we will attack that as far as helping with social distance. Because not as just going to class, kids go to the bathroom, they do other things, so we got to kind of watch how many we got out there at the same time. So high school feels confident that they can do this and not have too much disruption and get the kids to their next classes and so forth. Am I missing anything on yellow? Okay. Now orange, not that it's a good thing, but in some ways it becomes easier to do the social distancing when you only bring in half the kids to start with. That doesn't mean we want to be there, but in orange we really have to stress the social distancing at its highest levels. And in order to do that, you have to limit who starts in the building to begin with. So that's where this method of we have 2 days face-to-face, 3 days e-learning in a given week. It's still in person, but it's a hybrid model, okay? The number one question is, I have kids in a couple buildings or what have you, what if, is it possible to get these people in the same group? So if I'm an on-site day, my elementary and my middle school student can be the same schedule as far as who's on-site and who's not. We are currently working with Infinite Campus, and I believe we're close to developing where we can sort these groupings by household. And that's a great sort to start with. So the same people in the same household could be assigned to the same on-site day. And you also have some people in households that have different last names and all that. We got that. So we thought the household sort was the best way of doing it. And then junior high is piloting some of these and trying it out. And then their schedules will be built on that A group, B group, or on-site group, off-site group. Now I'm talking about a typical 5-day week. We'll have those weeks that are 4-day weeks, and we'll adjust that accordingly. But for normal run-of-the-mill conversation for today, it's a 3-2 schedule. So, or 2-3, however you want to look at it. But we feel good about what's going on. Now, Infinite Campus is our student software program for student services. They work with a lot of districts, so this isn't just a Norfolk thing. So, but we feel pretty good about that. Junior high has been tweaking it with their schedule and so forth. So anything you want to add to that, or did I cover it pretty well?
You actually covered it pretty well. We're just working through all of the different things and doing some trial runs to make sure the households are sorted appropriately. So.
Okay. It's not going to be perfect. It doesn't mean everybody is, but we feel like as close to 100% as we can to get that sort, so it is the least inconvenient to our families as possible. Because we know that's the biggest thing, myself included. You know, this is my first time in a long time. I only have one kid that's in the school system, but I would have had that same question. Okay, can we get them on the same day at least? Because, you know, especially when they don't drive. All right, red, let's hope we never go there. Red is the 100% e-learning home-based scenario. We've experienced that in the spring. Now we've made tweaks to that instructionally, and Mrs. Nelson's committee will go over that. But that's where we'll be. And our teachers jumped into that both feet in the spring. They've had a time to look at that and so forth. So that's red. Not really a lot more to talk about on that. Okay, I'm going to move off the school schedule unless subcommittee people have anything that I should cover. All right, attendance. Another main function of management of a school. You take attendance, who's there, who's not there, so forth. Green will follow attendance as normal. You know, teachers take it in their classroom, you know, those kinds of things. The state is currently looking at all these things. We will follow whatever is out there at the time as far as what we need to do to meet those requirements with NDE and local officials, county attorneys, and so forth on attendance and how we document that and so forth. That's another fluid process. So that's at all levels. When we get to yellow, really nothing changes there. It's the same thing. We're 100% on site. So taking attendance, you're there, you know, you're present. When we get to orange, okay, big question, okay, so I'm an on-site and off-site, you know, does that all count? Yes, instructional hours count and so forth, but how do we document that? Well, when you're on-site, we are normal attendance procedures and so forth. If you're off-site, we will track that through your participation in some capacity. If you logged on or you've turned in your assignments or whatever, there's a variety of methods to do that. So once again, NDE is still kind of, we're going to give you some distinct guidance on that, but that's how we anticipate that attendance looking if we are in the hybrid orange model. Mr. Wilson, did I miss anything in general on that? Okay. So, and then, of course, how we're doing it if you're at home on the hybrid model would be the same thing in red if we're 100% home-based. Probably hard to be tardy in red, so that's an advantage. So that was my attempt at humor. Thank you. All right. Food service protocols. As some of you know, we do contract with Lunchtime Solutions as our food management company. And as a company, all they deal with are school districts. So they started right out of the gate implementing procedures, how they will do things as a food service management company with their employees. Food service in green will be normal, but they will follow procedures sent by their company. And I'll give you some generalities. I'll put stuff on the website that they as a company are having for all their employees. They're going to have all their employees wear masks regardless, gloves, because they're serving food. And that's how they feel as a company they need to proceed. So that's will be there. We have in the past, we've taken cash at the point of sales. This is more common at the bigger buildings with the a la carte and so forth. We are going to suspend that. We're going to say if you have cash, go to the main office, put it on account, or do it online like you can do now to eliminate that at the point of sales. We want a touch-free atmosphere as much as possible. we really built our program around self-serve and options. We had to think a little differently here. So there will be no self-serve. It'll be served to you, or it'll be in prepackaged items that only you touch and put on, and so forth. Unfortunately, choices will be limited, not as much. That's twofold. In order to do this, we have to limit the choices, but the supply of food is very up and down, and so they are going to focus on the items that they feel we can get. And if you go through one of the fast foods now, you'll notice once in a while McDonald's will say, hey, we're out of the chicken sandwich today. Sorry, it didn't come in. Well, we're going to face the same thing here, so there'll be some disclaimers on the menus. This is the plan, but a day before we may have to adjust because the food just didn't come in. It's not available. And they're making the menu A, menu B, menu C, and if we get to D, I don't know yet, so we'll see what happens. Okay, but hopefully we won't get there. But that is really common. That's going to be common throughout all of our levels when we're on site in some capacity. You'll see, the fresh fruit and vegetable bar. It'll be prepackaged when somebody hands it to them. That's kind of anti what we've been doing in the past. We want the kids to go up there and get as much as they can, but you can't have buffets. So we had to change that philosophy. If you look here at green, breakfast and lunch can occur in the cafeteria at elementaries. They'll follow their normal procedures. Middle school is going to do a grab-and-go breakfast. They'll eat in their main commons. And then they have a procedure set up. Kids have punched in their numbers. They're not going to do that. The food service worker will do it for them, so we don't touch anything. Junior high, they are created 3 lunch schedules, not 2. That way they can social distance and spread things out. Senior high will be fairly normal in green, but we're adding more seating areas. A small gym is our backup, more tables to spread out. The forum will have more people in it. Yep, the forum will have some people in it. We'll be okay. And then the commons areas, like outside the concession stand and stuff. We'll just spread people out as much as we can. And then at the secondary level, they can use their ID card. It'll have a barcode on it. That's how they can pay for their lunches. Put the money on account. It scans, boom. And we have scanners for every point of sale. So at the end of the day, going to the scanners will probably stay with it. That's a slick process, but COVID got us there. So when you get to yellow, really not a lot has changed. It's just really now at the elementary level, they're going to look at using their classrooms in conjunction with the gym cafeteria space to create more social distancing. So the elementary principals felt pretty good that their 3rd and 4th graders could handle the classroom, and that the younger ones, that they would spread out more in the gym. And so, okay, how does that work? Well, the kitchen managers at those buildings will deliver the meals to the room, similar to what you see at a hospital, come with trays and they get their meals and so forth, and that's how that will work. And it was just a function of sometimes the little ones have a hard time. They need to get up from that desk. Everybody does, but they would spill and stuff, and it's just better to have it in the gym, and they could spread them out as well. So, Haven, Trish, Ryan, am I missing anything on that? We spent a lot of time talking about that and making it work. Trisha's got she's got a lot of students there in a small gym, so she kind of led the charge, and I got to think through this, and so I appreciate that, and I got that going. Really, the middle level and secondary, pretty much the same that I talked about in green. We get the orange. Here again, now you're only bringing in half the kids, but you're still doing the same thing, so you can really maximize that social distancing with these procedures. Here's the next question. Okay, now I got kids at home 2 to 3 days a week. What about the food service for them? Well, we have a food service program now, but we won't be able to do that in an orange. So what we'll do is kids can pre-order their last day on site and then maybe they have a 2-day break, whatever, and we can send take-home meals with them that day. We do that currently, not currently, we did that in summer school in the past. You would, take your lunch home with you, and your breakfast for the next morning, and that's how we'll do that. We'll just, you want a reimbursable meal, you want to buy one, it'll make any difference, then it'll be very similar to the grab and go we have now, but you'll just get it at school and take it home with you. It would just be for our MPS students, because this would not be the program we're in now. So, and middle school, junior high, same stuff there, senior high. And we've done that, so we feel pretty confident that won't be too difficult to pull off the take-home meals.
Dr. Robinson, during this whole time, if we get into orange or these different colors, is the senior high going to have open campus for lunch?
They will continue to do that, but once again, you do have to screen check and all that coming back. Yeah, good question. But we are anticipating and will be ready if more students want to stay on site. That's where the small gym comes into play. Because we understand some families will say, just stay there if you're going to be there. Don't be coming and going. So, red. Now I want to, red will be, we will implement the summer feeding program that we're in now if it's allowed. It all depends on the duration of red. If it is not, we will do daily meal pickups at the buildings through the system that we had in orange. It's just for everybody. And just daily you can come and we'll get your meals. So we'll be ready for both. So, question on food protocols from anybody in our subcommittee. Did I miss anything? We believe, we didn't talk a lot about that, but we did talk a little bit about that. Yeah, 100% participation and so forth, yes. At the 50-50, I think we talked about as long as it stays with them, not touched by anybody else, we'll be okay. So we'll have to work through the protocol. The sack lunches are more common at the elementary. Okay. Good question. Okay. Cleaning and disinfecting. We have what we call a normal cleaning schedule after looking at the recommendations and so forth. If we strictly adhere to our normal cleaning schedule, we felt we were good. And we also have added some items I'll share with you here that each teacher will get that they can have in their rooms. So let me first go with what the cleaning schedule is. If you look here, we have bathrooms and classrooms in this list, offices. That's not in your book, it's on the screen. Hallways, lunchroom. Okay. These are things that we do daily or try to do. I'm meeting with our maintenance custodial team on Tuesday next week and emphasizing it's not try, it is. And we will have a check sheet that they sign off on every day to verify that these tasks have been completed. So we have documentation we did these things. We also have updated our chemicals and cleaning agents that we're using. The agents that we're using, BioEsk is the big one, is EPA approved that have COVID killing properties and safe for schools. Bleach works, but bleach has problems with odors and so forth. So this is where we're going, and we have verified the shampoo that we use in our carpet cleaners has COVID killing properties and so forth. When we do a bathroom, there are some of the cleaners that are good for cleaning the stools to get the scale and stuff off, but we need to follow up with a BioS for that final layer of COVID killing. So it'll be some more things like that. We will be educating our custodial staff on those things and thinking through how they lay their day out and so forth. So we feel good. Our current schedule, we just got to mandate that we're doing it without exception. And that will, and with the science out there with the spread of virus on surfaces and so forth, we really feel we are meeting those needs for safety with that. I'll go back to the plan. So each teacher in our district, and if you're a teacher in a couple buildings, you'll get one in every building because you have a room in every building. Number one, you will get this bottle. It's got BioS label on it for your room, and it's got that spray cleaner in it. Because during the day, you may say, you know what, I need to just clean this, you know, and you have that opportunity to do that. Maybe a kid coughs or something, and I just want to catch it right away. You'll have that. You have a paper towel. When it runs out, we'll get you another one. So. Now this is a hot commodity, but we got it. So it's hand sanitizer. So and all these are refillable bottles, so we'll be able to refill them. Now we are being cognitive about the hand sanitizer too. There's a lot of it out there. We're trying to get this stuff that you know, won't catch on fire or anything because of all the alcohol content, but it does have to have alcohol in it to work. So we're being cognitive of that too. And then, I know we're going to get into this later, but everybody has gotten one. We'll have another, staff will have a cloth mask. We'll give them a couple. This is a cotton one, whether they choose to use it or not. And then the building's also got some, if kids need some, these are little ones for like kindergartners and stuff. We got a couple sizes. So this is their, I call it their kind of their kits that they'll get. Building principals will determine how they distribute it. They may come down, just grab it, or they may stick it in everybody's classrooms and so forth. And we have quite a bit of this on supply at our district maintenance, so we can keep the bottles filled. This is the biggie right here, this stuff right here. Okay. We also, this is kind of exciting. This is a sanitation gun. And this is how we're going to address how we do hallways and lockers and playground equipment. And so here it is. It's powered by a battery, very portable. You just fill this bottle up here with this agent, and you turn it on, you pull the trigger, and it's just a fine mist. Gyms, those cafeteria areas, because there's that, you know, how are you going to do this, wiping everything down by hand or whatever? Well, we've got some options here. Our buses, just think of all those big open areas that we need to address, especially when you're in orange, yellow and orange. So every building has one of these right now. It's in maintenance, you'll be getting it, and a lot of our buildings will have 3 or 4 depending on the size. So we can, our maintenance staff has this is a new tool for that, okay? You've seen these on TV, whatever. We really like this one. It's small, compact, portable. You know, last thing you want is something with a 50-foot cord you got to plug in, and it doesn't help you then. Okay? So when you look at yellow, it's the same normal schedule, but we're going to add, you know, we may need to do some wiping down a little more during the day. Depends on the level of use of so forth. And then when we get into orange, all of a sudden, instead of weekly, we're going to do daily wet mopping down the hard surface areas, the gyms, maybe going into those bathrooms, middle of the day, end of the day, you know, that kind of stuff. So we feel like we want to provide a very sanitized environment. What we did learn with the weight room is you got to be careful about spraying too much stuff, but all of a sudden it's just this fog of sanitizer. That isn't safe either, you know, breathing all that in. See, there's a happy medium. This gun, when it hits, after about 2 to 3 minutes, it's dissipated and it's done its job. So, Mr. Asmussen isn't here. He's the head of our maintenance custodial, but principals, am I missing anything? Mr. Reese, you've been living this a little bit in a modified capacity. Feel like the guns work?
Yeah, the guns have been fantastic. I don't know what we would do without those. kudos to all the custodians who have helped at our high school kind of get these procedures up and running.
Yes, we are also limiting the sharing of supplies and equipment. That's not always 100%. So when that happens, we'll clean it in between before student B gets it from student A. Yeah. You'll see that, you know, it's throughout the buildings. We'll do that at the highest level we can. Especially at our preschool, a lot of things they touch and all that. So Mrs. Jantz has a plan on all that as well for disinfecting with her team. If we would get to red, we would go code red with our cleaning, and it would be a deep cleaning of every building, top to bottom, as quickly as we can. So if we would move back to an orange or yellow, we're ready to go again. Okay? Social distancing. Green, once again, we will, we have all of our students on there for on-site learning. We're going to have signage and communications wellness team. They will show some of those things to assist with social distancing, emphasizing washing hands is one of your best defenses, and promoting that, giving those opportunities. We will do things such as we have a lot of floor tape that's being distributed to the buildings so they can put X's on the floor to help you see this when you go to stores and so forth. Here's an example of the high school right now. Those landmarks will have a lot of, and every building has a different way of doing things. Elementaries usually, they're pretty organized with this from the get-go, so they just got to have the space between the kids more. So we kind of took some lead from them how you do that at the older kids because they're used to their lines and their routines and how you do it. So here's an example of that. But that's at green. Middle level, the upstairs, the downstairs, the one-way hallways, that kind of stuff is still there and so forth. Yellow, we're doing those same things and just promoting that. We're also promoting, you know, they say, okay, let's just do this, the fist bumps. Let's just say, let's just avoid that altogether. Let's just not touch. Okay, let's talk about it. Let's just not do that. Okay. So, and then you can see fairly consistent there. K4 will start very much that crossover classroom groups and the marks and so forth that we place throughout the building to emphasize, you know, don't stop, don't go any further. School is a social environment, so it's going to take to really push this, you know. We don't teach people to separate, we teach people to come together. So it's going to take a little training up front. Once again, this is where that A and B group at the high school is a big player in that social distancing. He's talked about that before with this group to miss 2 minutes later, here's the next group. So orange really is the same as yellow, and it works because you only have half the kids. Now you can really maximize that social distancing. We can't guarantee it's going to be 6 feet every area of our buildings. Our buildings aren't built for that. But when we were in orange, we certainly are a whole lot closer. That's why we're doing that with bringing in half the students. Okay? And then, of course, red, we're pretty distant. So, principals, did I hit that? Okay, all right. You only have to listen to me for a little longer, I promise. So. All right, when we enter the building and we exit the building, we've touched on this already with our school schedule and so forth. The principals really and the teachers on that committee, we got to keep that routine. So we're just going to do those check-ins at the doors. Okay, we're going to screen. We got a system. Our visitors, now we're going to talk about, we haven't talked about the visitors yet. They'll enter through a designated safe and, this is a good thing about those safe and secure entrances. we were built for some of this already because of that. They will go through that screening through those locked entrance areas. And we already have glass there between people and all that for that starting process. And they'll exit through those designated areas too. That's at green. We go to yellow, really the same thing is in play. And we're really encouraging it. We're starting that process of, okay, how many visitors do we have to have? You know, it's just kind of the essential visitors. You got some vendors that are doing delivering things and all that. But we're, you know, maybe the speaker for the classrooms and all that. We got to really think through what we're doing and so forth. We're going to encourage parents, this is more at the lower levels, to stay in your cars during drop-off and pickup as much as possible, just to keep that distancing. And the large gatherings out in front of the schools, that's normal before and after school when you're dropping kids off and dismissing. Teachers will be outside trying to help with that and so forth. When we get to orange, and it's an elevated, we really at that point say we really shouldn't have any visitors. Didn't want to paint ourselves entirely in a corner because there may be a emergency situation or unique where you have to have maybe a kid's sick and mom has to come and get them, you know, work through that. But in general speaking terms, we're going to really limit that, and only those vendors that are delivering our food and essential things, especially during the school day. We'll really actually try to do some of that outside of the school day as much as possible. So, or we're going to be doing this in all levels too. We'll talk with LSI where their deliveries can unload the truck just to the door and then they take it from there. So they're not even coming in the buildings because they are traveling all over the areas. So. And red, and we're pretty much locked down. Essential staff only, and with those stringent guidelines, checking in. Okay. Principals? Specials, for those of you not familiar, when we're talking about specials, it's like our PE, music, art, those kinds of things, guidance at the elementary level. Secondary level, it's some of those type of electives and so forth. I had to spend some time on this with the elementaries because a lot of specials, they get up and they leave the class and go to the specials teacher or what have you. So the elementaries are really looking at, okay, how do we, this helps with the sharing too. Let's try to keep as many of those specials in the classroom as possible, where the special teachers come to them, and that way that student is in that kind of that bubble for the day as much as possible. And so that's the philosophy. Middle level, same thing. They don't necessarily stay in a room, but wherever that specials is, a lot of cases at that classroom, and we'll practice the social distancing as much as possible, the sharing of materials, same thing at the 9-12 level. Yellow, that really looks very similar. We're going to encourage those classes that can do things outside, like if it's a good day, PE can go outside and spread out a lot easier, and those kinds of things at all grade levels, for an example. The specials teachers are working through a lot of those unique things because a music class at K4 is very different than a secondary music class. But they have a big classroom that the kids report to anyway, and it was just getting that social distancing worked out for a secondary versus, okay, let's work out the elementary where they come to the room and so forth. So I believe the principals feel pretty good about that protocol right now. Am I missing anything on that, guys? Okay. And once again, it does become a little easier when you go to orange because you're only bringing in half. But you're able to maximize that social distancing at its highest level than if you have some people on site. Red, now it doesn't mean, well, it's e-learning, that's fine. Okay, one thing we learned is we had some special teachers that came up with some pretty innovative e-learning opportunities. We anticipate that moving forward. Mrs. Nelson will probably talk a little bit about that. We had a high school PE teacher. You had some online workouts or whatever, and I didn't go through it. I certainly should have, but they were pretty intense, and it was a good thing. So there's a lot of that stuff that I think we've already practiced, so I feel pretty good about the RICAD with the specials. Am I missing anything, principals? Okay. And with that, the operation facility recommendations has come to a close. Unless I got any immediate questions.
Board members, do you have any questions for Dr. Robinson or principals about the facilities and operations piece?
Thank you, Dr. Robinson.
Okay.
I think we should take a recess right now for 30 minutes, 20 minutes, 10 minutes? We're not doing lunch yet. Okay. 10 minutes till noon? Okay, 15, 5 after 12. Recess. Okay, recess is over. We will begin again. I think we're going to start with Dr. Robinson.
Yes, you thought you were done with Dr. Robinson, but he also has the Transportation Subcommittee, which is next, so.
All right. Can you hear me? Okay. All right, here we go. This one will not take as long, so. I'm sorry, we are in your book, page 10. Those of you who have the book. Our committee consisted of myself, Tom Asmussen, Corey Hall. Tom is our overseer of maintenance, facilities, custodial services. Corey Hall is our works directly with our special education transportation with Mrs. Lure, and then we had Chuck Hughes and Bruce Strong. Reason being is Mr. Hughes, middle school principal, that's one of our transportation hubs with our route buses, as is Woodland Park with Mr. Strong. So we included them. Overall, I wanted to go, regardless of what risk level we are in, we are going to limit our transportation to just our transporting of our students to and from school and for the on-site instruction. We will make exceptions for the district-approved NSAA activities or similar events. Elementary-wise, we are going to really limit or postpone or not have this year, wherever you want to phrase it, field trips until further notice. We just feel like twofold. The social distancing on a bus is challenging, and then if you're leaving our community, you do not know what the other communities' stages are in. So we need to stay within our Norfolk bubble as much as possible. All of our district employees who are drivers, riders, or other staff will be wearing face masks regardless of level, okay? When they're transporting students. So that's a given. And our buses will be sanitized daily when we are in green or yellow. The sanitation gun I showed you earlier is going to be a key tool for that. When we are in orange or red, they will be sanitized between each use. So for example, our smaller sped buses, they usually park at the buildings till the end of the day. We will have somebody go out and sanitize that in the middle of the day before the student gets back on at the end of the day when we're in orange, okay? I included red because right now we don't know. We may have some unique circumstances in red based on guidance through NDE or IEPs where there may still need to be some of the uses with our sped transportation. So am I saying that accurately, Mrs. Ward? Okay. So that's big picture. That's regardless of level. Here's what we're doing on that. When we are in green, we will do the temperature and symptoms screenings on the sped buses because they will be screened before they get on the bus. That way, when they get to the building, they are already screened. They're very comfortable with those drivers and riders, and sometimes they use a specific entrance that we're not going to necessarily staff for that. So we're going to do that before they get on the bus. Number two with that is if there is a temperature or whatever, 9 times out of 10, they're at the student's home, so then the parent's there to take the student back, okay? The capacity in the buses will not be restricted in green. At the elementary level, same thing applies in the secondary. This is across the board. Our regular route buses will run as regular route buses. Our drivers will wear the face mask, we'll sanitize bus daily, okay? When we're in yellow, same thing really occurs. It's no different than green. Okay? If we would move to orange, the fact that we're at 50% helps because we only have 50% of the students riding. We're going to add some other items, okay? We're going to do the temperature screening before they even get on the bus in orange. We're not going to wait to the building, okay? We're going to do that at the bus, and then they'll get it again at the building as well. we're going to, students, and we'll get to the mask issue here towards the end. Students will be wearing masks, as the drivers always be wearing masks regardless. And we'll have hand sanitizer that they put on their hand before they load in orange, okay? When we load a bus, we're going to load at 50% capacity. And if we have to run another route again, the same bus coming back to accomplish that, we will in orange. And we're going to follow this example here that I have written. We will load back to front and then exit front to back, so the students aren't crossing, okay? One kid to a seat, and that's as far as we go, okay? And then you go, row 1 is a window seat, row 2, they're in the aisle, so it looks like this on the route buses, okay? If we would be in a red, really, transportation is suspended unless required by the state or IEP. Okay? And we are very fortunate in our district. All of our buses primarily are housed inside a building, and they are kept very clean. So once they're home at their building, they'll get sanitized, kept inside. And in the winter, of course, they're kept warm and all that, and it's just a lot easier to sanitize and keep them. So on a general basis, our buses are always very clean, but we're going to add these steps with the daily sanitation. This is where the fogger mister comes into play in some cases, but every seat's going to be wiped down. The drivers will have those bottles and paper towels available with them as well, in case somebody coughs or whatever, and they just go right away. Let's not just wait till the day, let's catch it now. So that is how we're handling our transportation. Our activity routes will all be dependent upon our activity runs, if the activity is taking place, where it's at, and we'll follow those same procedures with sanitation on those coach buses. It may look a little different when you have the fabric seats versus the vinyl seats, but sanitation, yes, and with those protocols. Mr. Reese, anything I missed on that? Okay. All right. That is transportation.
Bill,
Questions?
I'm assuming with the 50% capacity, any kid who rides the bus, that you'll be looking at that to separate them in group A or B. So
We'll do our best. We may not be foolproof. That's where I had, if we have to run the route a second time, work with the buildings if they're a little late or whatever, because one thing about some of our route buses, it's a bus stop, and whoever's there that day gets on. It's not the same every day sometimes. So, but good question. Won't be foolproof, but we will do everything we can to minimize the inconvenience that we have. So, all right, anything else? All right, thank you.
Okay, next is the Technology Committee, which was led by Mr. Wilson.
Thank you. The Technology Committee got together and really looked at the investment the district has put into the technology that we have. How do we keep that safe and clean for students to use? What is an appropriate cleaner that we can use that will not damage that piece of equipment? A lot of Clorox wipes around and those rags that are soaked in solution. If we wipe down with that and it seeps in, that could cause some problems for our technology. So the team worked on a sanitation plan that we will share with teachers on how each device that we have in our district should be cleaned, what is an appropriate cleaner to use for that device, and a lot of the stuff that or Dr. Robinson showed there, that spray bottle, is going to work for our stuff. We've been doing little science experiments and checking to make sure that it's not going to cause any problems, it's not going to cause any gumming up of the keyboards, and so we've got in green. And this sanitation plan goes through all of our levels, green through red, that we will use. We also have in the middle school, junior high, and high school, every student has their own Chromebook. So we've looked at how do we address, if it's a single student using the device, it doesn't need to be necessarily cleaned as often as some of our elementary schools where we have devices that do get shared. So that's all outlined in the tech sanitation plan for the teachers. As we skip down to yellow, again, there wasn't a whole lot of change. I just want to make sure that we're doing the appropriate cleaning and using the right equipment to clean. But really the big change for us comes in orange, where we start having students that will not be in school. And so at our last board meeting, we discussed the purchasing of some hotspots. We have started to have those hotspots come in. So junior high, high school was our original discussion that we would buy hotspots for and have that available for students to check out as needed. And then I also linked on this a form that the students could fill out, parents would sign off on that they were checking one out. We're continuing to research and apply for some different grant options to continue to expand that program. And we've just heard from some new grants that we have received that we're hopeful we will be able to support middle school, junior high, and high school internet needs. And then so we would start checking those out as needed at level orange, and then obviously at level red when all students are at home, to make sure that we are meeting those internet needs for students middle school through high school.
I see you have a question mark on, do we check out devices for students who are quarantined for 2 weeks? That's still a question mark.
Well, that was, we're looking back at that. If you look at green, we talk about training our students in 3rd and 4th grade. We currently don't send those devices home with the students. So we want to see how that training goes and evaluate, are we comfortable with these devices going home, or are we not comfortable? And that would be also part of the discussion for grade 3 and 4 at level red. Good question. Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Wilson? A wellness subcommittee, Mrs. Luer.
Thank you, Dr. Robinson. Hi, Dr. Thompson. How are you today? Sorry about that, buddy. It's just he's been doing so much talking. Thank you. I'm almost there. I'm almost there on my thing. My summarization is with the health wellness of our students, we will screen our staff and students at every level, green, yellow, and orange, and at red. If we are at e-learning, we would be screening our staff that come enter the buildings, along with anyone else. With the, if we should have a student become ill at school, we will have a separate room that we have students evaluated with there. There's a difference in the school nurse's office between a skin knee and a student with a fever, so we will have the fever room be separate than I scrape my knee and recessed, just to keep the kids separate that way. And then with Norfolk Public Schools, we will send all kids home with 100 temperatures. I know the CDC says 100.4, but state law says we can at 100, and that has always been our practice at Norfolk Public. So it will continue to stay at 100 degrees. Parents will be called to pick up their students. And then other symptoms based on the health department guidelines will be evaluated as well. But like I said, there will be a separate room for our students that may become ill at school to keep them isolated from other students. And then with our mental health piece, we will continue as we have we still have our partnerships with Midtown Health and Oasis Counseling, as well as our contracted service with our ESU for a mental health provider at the high school. We will touch base with our students that we had contact with and have remained in contact with through teletherapy. And then the same procedures of needing assistance or seeking out concerns from staff or students. We have all the same protocol in place there. The one thing that I would say would be slightly different is, well, it's not slightly different, it's pretty new. We're going to on the website have some resources for parents and teachers alike to be able to work with students and just kind of get a feel for how they're doing with returning to school and how what it was like while they weren't in school. So we have some of those resources. We'll actually be posting that on the website once final approval. Are there any questions from the board members? Thank you.
Transitions Committee, again, is Mr. Wilson on page 40.
Thank you, Dr. Thompson. The transition committee, we were looking at what is the process of students transitioning from high school to college? How can we best make that process smoother? What are any hurdles that maybe have been put into place because of COVID? So in the green, a lot of this stuff is similar to what we've done in the past with our students transitioning from high school to college or life after high school. But what COVID's maybe stopped us or made us change or even rethink would be the processes that we use to get that information out. We just actually finished up our rehearsal for graduation today, this morning, and so all the students have been emailed, the graduating seniors have been emailed a survey. What is their current plans? Is there a good way for us to contact them? So some of that information then is used to compile, and we research that or look at how can we best, if there was a struggle, if a kid was planning on going to college but something has come up, how can we help alleviate that or create some bridges for those students? And then also, just with our juniors that currently will be seniors coming up this fall, they didn't get a chance to take the ACT test in the spring. And we're looking at college entrances. That's one of the things the college is going to look for. In talking with the colleges, though, we're giving the option for our seniors to take that ACT test here in September. So the state's going to bring that back around for those kids that didn't get a chance to take it. But then also some colleges are looking at, even depending on how things go this fall, letting students enroll without an ACT test. So there's some things kind of on the horizon there. Just going to have to look at what the colleges are going to allow, what they're not going to allow. But in green, we're still continuing to collect all of our graduation data, and that survey data. We're going to start looking at clearinghouse tracking data. Mr. Ippenson was going to get that information, which is another process we can use to track those students after high school. Big one for our seniors coming in this fall would be, how do we get them familiar with colleges? How do we get them familiar with the college options? If we're in green and yellow, we can have some more contact with those students in our buildings, but we won't necessarily be sending those students to those colleges in some of our college tours that we've done in groups before. And so a lot of colleges have started offering virtual tours for our students. The big thing for us is just getting kids involved in that, setting that process up, that communication piece for them. Doesn't really give the kids the exact same feel as spending some time on campus, but we're going to try to do the best we can with them for that option. And so in green and yellow, that makes, and even in orange, a lot of those things are available for us. But the big one is when we get to red, just making sure that we have that communication piece. Really, we always have all of our information, our scholarships posted on our website, but really expanding our communication and to our parents, making sure they are involved with that process, making sure they're aware of deadlines, things that kids should be doing and when they should be doing those things. It's much easier, obviously, in green, yellow, and orange for us to do those when counselors can sit there and talk to those students. Obviously, when they're at home in red, that makes it harder for them. So schedule Zoom meetings for those counselors with those senior class with their letters of the alphabet that they work with as well. So I'll entertain any questions anybody has regarding that.
Mr. Wilson, do you foresee, if the pandemic is enduring, that there are other transitions that might need to be built into the plan in addition to those that relate to seniors?
Are you discussing like the transition between junior high and high school, or? Right. I think that's something obviously that we have looked at. The goal of this transition from Launch Nebraska was to focus on transition from high school to post-secondary options.
Okay, then academics or instruction is next. Mrs. Nelson and Mrs. Moore also.
Thank you, Dr. Thompson. Now we can really talk about some education. However, everybody that's spoke to the plan prior to this report, it's very dynamic. Now, I gave you a summary page, actually, I think Mary Hoyne, and I really condensed because the instruction goals are very lengthy in your big book, and it goes into great detail because the people on the team thought very thoroughly when they went through that. So I tried to abridge that into this shorter 3-page document for you to read as we just go through today, right? So the first thing I think that's important for you folks to understand is when we start school, we are starting school. We're going to start learning. We're going to start learning new things, and we're going to continue that throughout the year and keep giving feedback to students as they learn and grow through new materials. So I just do want to mention that first. According to Launch Nebraska, they had suggested we break this into about 7 different categories. The academic goal is that which we will focus on for pre-K through 12, which indicates that we will assert that our students will be on track successfully by the end of the year 2022. We're also at Norfolk Public Schools writing appropriate growth goals that will be set within each core academic area, and we will track and monitor those through GOLD, which is the preschool assessment system, and WEA MAP, which is K-8, and then pre-ACT and ACT at the senior high level. It just does not matter what dial color we are in. That's our goal. We're sticking to that, and we'll press forward with that in our minds. Mrs. Lohr, she's going to speak to the social emotional category.
So with our social emotional, again, like I spoke earlier, the community partners in school will work together on referrals for students with an emotional need or social need. Social and emotional learning resources are available to the staff, the students, and parents, as I spoke to earlier, and reporting on incidents occurs through the hotline if there was a higher need to report. That is across the board at all levels. And references and access to information will be available on our website, as I had shared, and that will be the same through each level. But at orange and red, it may move to telehealth. But this green and yellow, the outside agencies will still continue to enjoy our learning to serve our students.
Okay, and many of these subcategories within instruction affect each other, and you'll kind of see that as we go through. The assessment portion, we have instrumental and required assessments that occur throughout the year, and the results of those assessments are used to drive many decisions in our instruction, in our interventions, in our enrichments, and it provides progress data to our teachers, our students, and our parents. So it drives the use of our time during the day for our teachers and our interventionists as well. So it's all very dynamic. It's in combination with some of the things that even Dr. Robinson alluded to with small groups. But we have MAP fluency, which is tied to our Reading Act law that we will need to administer 3 times a year. NWEA MAP growth for K-8 is twice a year. NSCAS is 3rd through 8th grade, and that is once a year. And we will administer pre-ACT and ACT twice a year, in the fall and the spring, one of which of those is a required for the Nebraska at the 11th grade level during the spring semester. So it's just important to understand that we do the additional for our growth information for progress on students. And obviously the management of space, facilities, will drive the scheduling in any of these color dial areas. The biggest change you will see really occurs if we would go from a yellow scenario to an orange scenario. And essentially what we're saying in the orange scenario is that our testing windows will be extended. You know, typically in a best case scenario, our testing windows would be limited in a short amount of time. But where we only have half the students, obviously it'll take you twice the amount of time to accomplish the same thing. So that's where you will see the difference there. Also, our PLC teams will rely very strongly on their common formative assessments that they've already written in-house. That's our immediate and quick data to track our student progress and their learning. In the category of interventions now, we have in the K-8 realm, MTSS, that's multi-tiered systems of support. We've talked about that in the past. We have guides for the decisions on how to help students navigate with their learning, in all categories, in all areas with as much possibility. Students with disabilities will receive full core instruction and accommodations and modifications as specified according to their IEP and 504 plans. Differentiated supports are offered within the core instruction block first, and we will progress monitor and assist with decisions for additional extended learning opportunities and instructional supports as we watch how they're progressing and being very cognizant of seeing where they are in their progression of their learning. When it becomes an orange scenario or a red scenario, that's where it becomes a little bit more interesting. We have to try harder to where our interventionists and our specialists will need to electronically or possibly through the phone connect with our students. They did that last spring. We just would need to be more conscientious of that. And all students still have reassessment opportunities that follow the guidelines at their grade levels. So we can keep monitoring our interventions, assisting our students to get them where we need them to be. The next category is about identification of vulnerable students, and Mrs. Brewer is going to talk about that.
As with special education, identification of students through formal assessments once their intervention through MTSS demonstrate the need for, through a parent request, is when we would assess a student for an IEP. Students who are already identified obviously will have those things in place for themselves. Students who are new to the district, who would be your kindergartners or move-ins, if there's an indication on the home language survey that we need to do an assessment on them, we will complete a screener for English language learners, and then those students would also receive the supports that they would need through instruction. The students who are currently in ELL will continue to receive the supports. Students who may be homeless, as identified through our state liaison, state trained liaison in the district, will receive the assistance they need, whether it be through lunch supports, school supplies, things like that. And then illness is determined by screening at the door, parent notification, and a doctor's note. Instructional supports will follow guidance stated in the intervention section of these students. So if a student needs to be absent due to any illness, we would support them through that, depending on the length of the absence.
Okay, in the area of curriculum planning, we've been planning since late April, May, and we've been redefining and readjusting our paradigm of what we're looking at and how we deliver it. So the time schedule, the pacing guides are developed for our courses, and that color dial will affect the time schedules and those pacing guides. So what we're intended, which we've talked about since May, is courses that occur in 2nd through 12th grade will be utilizing the Google Classroom for their organizational purposes and to assist with any intermittent absences of students or staff. And the off-campus usage is really dependent upon the unique situation of the user, their age, their grade level, and their remote access, right? So kind of to echo what Mr. Wilson had said is we have some students in the lower levels that are not trained and understand how to use Google Classroom, for example. So our encouragement to teachers is to, when we are together, they get that experience, they get that training and practice. So if there is any time that they would have to rely on it and use it on their own, they could do that. You can see in the different categories, regular pacing guides will exist as long as we remain in green and yellow. And but what we need to do when we're in yellow is have a practice for preparation in case we would be in orange, because then what that would tell us is that there would be a couple days a week where they would be at home in charge of their own independent learning. And so we need to help them establish some protocols for themselves on how do I access what I need to do, or how do I plan ahead if I don't have digital access, what am I taking home with me and what am I working on. And again, the longer full report that you have printed out in the book specifies about scheduling, different specials classes, when, how that happens. The folks that worked on that plan went into great detail in there about thinking that through if they had to go to that scenario. And then the last category is on professional development. And again, just not to sound like a broken record, but we did start that in May, and we dedicated some time for collaboration and working ahead to plan for, okay, we know what we missed this spring. Now how can we bridge this gap this fall and in the next year? And how are we going to do that? When are we going to do that? And how do we scaffold that instruction for students? And so our PD moving forward is to continue to support teachers in their use through Google Classroom. Maybe it's remoting assessments. Maybe it's just remote connections. We need to reaffirm with interventionists and our paras on how they can support and help students in the unique situations as well. Does the board have any questions about this?
I just wanted to make one comment before we open up to questions. In the spring, NDE's guidance to schools was to focus on the maintenance of previous learning and to provide some enrichment activities. So that was the focus of our remote learning. This fall, we're going to follow our typical curriculum with a very similar scope and sequence regardless of what level we're in. So it will be much more rigorous and robust than what students received in the spring, regardless of whether they're in person or if they're online.
Okay. Back on social and emotional learning. Reporting of incidents occurs via the Nebraska hotline. What is an incident?
It would be like a high incident of abuse or neglect, where we would look at reporting those kinds of things, as we always do, because we are mandated reporters as state educators.
Who is this home-based liaison, state trained liaison?
It's me.
I thought so. Sure. Beth, we were starting last year. We were involved. Was going to start this year some form of implementing some sort of new grading system in the district. What is the status of that grading system now?
Okay, so last spring we had our large committee meeting, and all of the summary of that is online. However, but what I will tell you is with our target-based grading, we are working harder at the younger levels and gradually growing it through middle school and junior high. and then we're holding on what we're doing in senior high until we have a confirmed viable system occurring in our younger levels first. If you're asking about timeline or the general essence of that, we've also updated information on our website as well. Can I answer something more specific to you?
Teachers and throwing something that magnitude of new grading system on. I know we've started, we began something, but we're just
Well, our
adding a heavy workload.
right. So our targeted grading is essentially streamlining to our priority standards, and those are the things we have to hold true to through our district and our curriculum. So really what's affected is our pacing guide, and if we have to slow the pacing guide down, then that becomes a readjustment there. But what our priorities are don't change at each grade level. We have a grade level expectations at their standards.
I was just concerned about that. I am.
Thank you.
Okay, we're getting close to the end. We have staffing next with Angie Bauman on page 99.
Yikes, long document. Thank you, Dr. Thompson. So for staffing, on the committee was Mr. Ippinson, Dr. Jen Robinson, Mrs. Hausman, and Mr. Hughes. And we worked through a variety of areas that I'll address that really will rely on final decisions in each of the areas already discussed, because we have to staff what facilities planned, or we have to staff according to what the other plans were. But to start with, on health screenings, each different level has determined which entrances students will be able to enter and how those will be staffed. So at the elementary levels, it was determined that one staff member at each determined entrance would be sufficient. But in the bigger buildings, they'll need multiple staff because they'll have multiple screening stations per se. Since our closure in March, staff that have been in the buildings have been documenting their own temperatures and documenting their own symptoms, and that will continue at each building, and that will be recorded for staff. And all of the items needed to do those system screenings have already been looked at by Dr. Robinson's committee. As far as health screenings and staffing that won't change in yellow or orange. In orange, there would be fewer students to have to screen, so that could reduce the number of staff we need in the mornings, just because we would be in that 2-3 rotation there. In red, we would not be doing screening of students because it would be they would be at home, but we would continue with any staff that might be on campus. Staffing of student lunches in green will follow normal lunch procedures, so that will be as buildings have staffed that in past years. But if we are in yellow and we have to social distance more, each building will be putting together a plan of which classrooms they'll have to use versus which classes will be eating in the lunchroom, and those will have to be staffed so that all of our students are supervised during lunch. So each building has put some details in the book as to some plans with that. As mentioned earlier, junior high did expand to 3 lunch periods to help with that social distancing. And at the elementaries, they'll be looking at if they need to change their stagger of lunch times to be able to staff that, or if they can do that the way they currently have those lunch times set up. In orange, it would be the same as yellow, although we'd have fewer students, so staffing might be a little easier of lunch times because there's fewer staff to supervise, although just depends on the makeup of the buildings and how they'll look at spreading out and social distancing even more cautiously. At Red for lunches, our staffing would look similar to what it does this summer. If Lunchtime Solutions needs assistance with staff, we've been able to offer some staff this summer, so we would look at that option as well. As far as staff training, we have put some things in place to train staff on hygiene. That's very much out in the public right now of what hygiene should look like, but we will have our own signs and posters and things hung for staff, and we will, once our plan is approved, we'll have our Norfolk Public School mask expectations shared with everyone, and anything that would be necessary for staff to understand when they should and shouldn't be in school with their own health and following those guidelines that are in place. The cleaning, Dr. Robinson already talked about that we already have a cleaning in place, so our custodians would be able to meet the staffing needs for the cleaning that needs to happen. If we go to yellow, the staffing would remain the same for cleaning. We would need to look a little more carefully at our classroom setup. Staff would have to do a little rearranging in there for social distancing. Again, that's just training of staff, not changing number of staff that we need. If we go to yellow, we will have to orange, we'll have to stop some of the things that we might otherwise do to promote social distancing, like eating in staff lounges will be pretty tricky to social distance, and if we're in orange, we certainly want to avoid moving into red. So we'll have to look at not having staff lounges utilized. Small conference rooms won't be very beneficial, and in-person staff meetings would turn into Zoom meetings so that we can keep our staff and students healthy and not in the red. When we move into substitutes, we certainly want to have a large pool of substitute teachers and paras to be able to utilize if necessary. If we're in green, we'll follow all of our standard procedures and utilize the subs that we have. And that would happen at green, yellow, and orange. We have our sub-service in place. We'll continue to use that. If we get to yellow, we anticipate we may have staff that have to help cover each other's, utilizing their plan times, which has been done in the past, and there is a system set up for that in the buildings. We have talked about needing to recruit a little heavier for subs. We have increased our advertising and have done a little more with some electronic advertising on the web and in the paper, and trying to reach out to a variety of age groups of people that would be available and qualified to sub. So we're hoping we get some good feedback on that. Earlier was mentioned that classrooms would be utilizing Google Classroom. When our sub first training before the start of the school year, will incorporate the instruction that is in Google Classroom can be utilized by those substitutes as well. And some of them have been doing that in the past, but for any new coming in, we want to make sure they have access to that instructional material. We spent the spring getting those first 4 weeks ready to go. Kate had to be remote, so those things are in place already. And each building that has co-teachers, for example, 2 second grade teachers, they would be able to assist with any subs coming in and getting them information they need. And in the upper levels, they have teachers that can get those subs ready to go each day and know where to find their information. That was all shared into a general storage area, so it should be easy to access. And if we move into orange, it would be the same as yellow, and then if we're in red, that would look very different. So, if anyone knows anyone that's looking to sub, send them my way. I'd love to talk to them. When we go to the area of leave and compensation, that would be following the FFCRA guidelines and what staff need to do if they become ill, or if they have to quarantine, or all the other areas that fall in there. So it would be following those guidelines, which we, once we have approval on that, would be sharing with staff, so it's very clear to them what their options are. And then that would play a part in green, yellow, orange, red. Any questions on
I have a question. Unless you-
I was just gonna say, so as of right now, we are not adding any positions, but as we get into this and see how much time or personnel it takes to do symptom checks and to run lunch differently, it's possible we may need to adjust para, custodian, and health tech hours, or even add some positions. So Mrs. Bauman is aware of that and ready to move forward with that if it becomes necessary.
Lunchtime Solutions is doing the same thing. They have not made a decision on additional staff to do serve everybody, some additional cleaning. But they do anticipate they may need to do some temporary employee ads. That will be their decision as a company, but they have not moved forward yet on that. But I'll throw that out there as well.
I would just say with what you added to, or what was added to the custodial staff in terms of cleaning the buildings, the additional cleaning, it seems to me that we should consider adding additional time to them, overtime, or hiring additional staff, because I don't know how they're gonna be able to do all of that, especially when we get into the greens and the oranges, you know. I think we're gonna need to look at that. And at this point in time, you know, I'm not one for spending a lot of money, but it would seem to me appropriate for us to look at doing more of the contracting with substitute teachers so that they'll just stay in our district, so we don't have those individuals going to other school districts and creating exposures to them and then maybe bringing it back to us. So I think that would be a wise use of our money. You know? I don't know how many of those individuals you're talking about needing, but it would seem to me that there's enough of a need just to have substitutes anyway, and to have people on board full time like we do with a couple now. It'd be very, very beneficial to the school district.
And in response to that, Bob, we did just post this week, I'm not sure which day, but we did post for full-time substitute applicants to come in. So we'll evaluate what kind of response we get to that. We have interested people in the area.
The board had given us permission to add one additional full-time sub. We could potentially look at doing more at the August meeting if we see that we have good candidates for that.
Well, I certainly would encourage us to do so.
I've heard some concern from parents who right now drop their kids off, like say at an elementary, and they line up outside and then the parents go to work. We're not going to be allowing that, correct?
We still will have the supervision that we have at the same times, but students will enter the buildings and come into their classrooms, is what it's sounding like. But as far as having supervision there at 7:30, so a parent can go to work, that's not been standard practice for supervision because our staff are not on duty that early.
So what time is the start time?
Students will enter the buildings at 7:45. Screenings will begin at 7:45, which is when supervision has begun in the past.
And do we anticipate a cluster at that time of several kids standing there, or no, not at all?
You know, that's a great question. I think until we get it going, each building we had talked about how many entrances we needed to ensure that students can get in without a long wait time, especially when we get into weather situations. You know, we're not going to leave kids stand out there in a thunderstorm. We'll figure out alternate plans to get them in the building and then screen them before they get to their classrooms. But I would anticipate as quickly as the screening can happen based on the thermometers we have in the scanning system, that it should go fairly quickly.
And if a parent has already left and a kiddo has a high temperature, that's when they get into a quarantine room or whatever you want to call it.
Correct. Yep, that's when parent contact will be made. Yeah.
And second on that, back to my report, this is why we've added additional entry points, is to speed that up as well, especially in the morning with the screenings and so forth, so they're not waiting very long.
Did I miss, like, so elementary, will the kids know which door they will go to?
Each building will try to identify so they have a routine of where they go and so forth. But to have a uniform, say it's this for every building, they'll be a little unique to each building, but we will have more than just one entrance at each site for this because we know it's going to take a little bit of time.
We also had a communications committee. There is not a report in your book on that, but Mrs. Dittmer is going to share some information with you.
Well, this, okay. Actually, we did add a page at the very end today. So the very last page of your booklet has something about the communications team. The communications team, we're in a little bit of a unique position because we really can't communicate anything directly to anyone until it's been decided and finalized. So we've done a lot of background work of getting ready so that when the information is ready to go, we can share it with everyone. One way that we've done that is we've built a Google form that we've asked each of the subcommittees as they finalize details if they want it to go out in a specific way to a specific target audience, that they can fill that out and get it to us. And then that gives us the processes to go through to make sure we get that translated, make sure we get it posted, and get it communicated in a clear and concise manner. That's really been a focus of what our committee has talked about a lot, is making sure that things are clear, concise, and handled in a timely manner. So we've tried to put some tools in place for that. There are many ways that information can be communicated internally and externally. We have many stakeholders tied to the district, and so we've tried to itemize on this list towards the bottom there, the bullet points, all the different ways that information could be shared. And we've tried to share all that with the subcommittees, asking them to take all those different forms of communication into consideration. Probably the biggest project we've worked on is preparing this summary document that you all received. This is a draft, basically a condensed down version of all of the hundreds of pages that have been shared with you today. And we feel that this could be helpful as a document to put on the website that kind of summarizes things, a document that can be shared if somebody has specific questions or wants to be able at a glance to see how the change of the risk dial color might affect how things go. So there's several pages there. You can see in that document there are also copies of signs that we have put together for our buildings. This is one that's in there. And it is the sign that will go at any point of entry that says basically stop, stay home if you're sick. Are you experiencing any of these symptoms? And so it details that. And each one of these are available in English and in Spanish. And so we have printed and laminated and cut and distributed almost 1,500 copies of signs out to the school buildings. They actually went out this week. And so you'll start seeing those pop up in the buildings. They're to serve as cues and reminders to our students and our staff of the simple things we need to do to try to help prevent the spread. And and those are from the CDC, so they're from a good, reliable source. At the bottom of the page there, you can also see it's just a screenshot. It's not a link to the actual video, but the CDC site also has some short videos. They're all a minute or less. Some of them are 15, 20 seconds is all. And they are very simple, very easy to understand. All grade levels, I believe, would understand them. And so we're going to include those too and ask teachers and school buildings to include those in just part of their teaching and training of the new safety protocols. This one I screenshot up here is about a minute long, and it goes through and basically just screen by screen says, stay 6 feet apart, and it illustrates what 6 feet apart is. If you're feeling ill, stay home, like those kind of things. So for example, and there's no speaking, they're all just visuals. So for example, one thing we talked about was in the forum at the high school, the TVs that are playing in there just on rotation as kids are just hanging out during lunch or whatever. That could be part of the rotation of what's being played to students up on the screens, just as a reminder to be careful and to follow the protocols. And then I'm guessing maybe after today's meeting, there might be a little more communicating for our team to jump into, and we're ready to do that.
Questions from the board for Sarah? Her job is really just beginning. When we started, we also had an activities committee as part of this group, but we quickly realized that that needed to be handled completely separately from the return to school document, partly because it was so comprehensive, but also because it's not strictly tied to the Elkhorn-Logan Valley Public Health Department risk dial. It's also tied to any opposing teams' risk dial and the state's risk dial and NSAA guidelines and a whole lot of other things. So the activities committee will be meeting next week to really start doing more planning with that, and that will be just separate from this document. So that brings us to the topic of masks. And the committee has drafted a statement that we believe is the appropriate approach to take and that we are recommending. It is on page 106 and 107 of your book, and I'm just going to start by reading that so that everyone can hear it. So, the Elkhorn-Logan Valley Public Health Department, the Nebraska Association of Local Health Directors, and the Norfolk Public Schools strongly recommend that cloth face masks be worn by students and staff at all times to the highest extent possible. The use of cloth face masks consistently among students and staff who are unable to physically distance by 6 feet is a critical factor in determining the need for quarantine if a COVID positive case arises in our school. For example, the Elkhorn-Logan Valley Public Health Department has indicated that when a COVID positive case arises in a school setting, staff and students who were around that person will not be required to quarantine if face coverings were worn consistently and appropriately, unless extenuating circumstances apply. On the other hand, staff and students who were around that person will be required to quarantine for 14 days if face coverings were not worn by the COVID positive individual and or those individuals who were near that person within their 6-foot radius. So in big red letters, face mask equals no quarantine, lack of face mask equals quarantine. Although we are doing everything we can to create the safest environment possible for all students, it is not possible for us to maintain 6 feet of social distancing space around each individual at all times throughout the day. Face masks are the best way to reduce the risk to students and staff from potential exposure to COVID and the resulting 14-day quarantines. We are asking all parents to assist us in encouraging students to wear their masks throughout the school day consistently and appropriately. In addition, we are requiring our staff to wear their masks throughout the day whenever feasible. We simply cannot overstress how important the wearing of face masks will be to keeping students and staff safe and in school. Therefore, we will provide 2 cloth face masks for all students and staff to wear at school. Staff and students may wear their own masks as long as the mask meets all dress code expectations. Bandanas are not an acceptable face covering. So when NPS is operating in the green tier, masks will be recommended for all students and staff, and some staff may be required to wear them. When NPS is operating within yellow tier, masks will be strongly recommended for students and required for staff. When NPS is operating with the orange tier, masks will be required for students and staff. And then when NPS is operating in the red tier, students will not be reporting to school on site, but staff that are reporting would be required to wear masks. And there is a note that says individual waivers may be provided to those with legitimate and documented medical reasons for not wearing a face mask. and there's a procedure for that. So that is the committee's recommendation. We had the ability to do an anonymous poll through Zoom, and over 96% of the committee supported this recommendation. One person on the committee said they did not support it, and one person could not actually vote because of technical difficulties, but he said that he would have voted for it, so it would have been higher than 96%. Elkhorn Logan Valley Public Health Department had said at green and yellow, they strongly recommend masks at all times for both students and staff, and at orange, it should be required. The Nebraska Department of Education has said that at green, masks are recommended and they're essential when social distancing is not possible. And they really stressed at yellow and orange that it's essential in schools. But nobody will say required. And then Tammy Day has a statement that she asked us to read as well.
Okay, I'm going to read this from our fellow board member, Tammy Day, who is on Zoom and not able to speak. Administrators and board, I am sorry that I'm unable to attend this board meeting as I am out of town, but I wanted to weigh in on the MPS reopening plan for fall 2020. It is a privilege and pleasure to serve on the Norfolk Public Schools Board of Education. The board and staff work well together to provide a high-quality educational experience for students in our community. I believe this is true because we've always done what is in our students' and teachers' best interest, even when it is difficult. The school reopening plan for fall is no exception. Thanks to the team who has spent countless hours researching and developing safe options for our students to be back in the classroom this fall. Amid an unprecedented health crisis, I believe that NPS will figure out how to reopen schools safely. Like all of you, I believe that the best path forward is to have students back in the classroom full time. As a parent and a business owner, I see the impact of having schools shuttered and students learning from home. When schools cannot function normally, it impacts students, families, and businesses. That is why I believe we should do everything we can to make sure students can return to school and stay there. When I look at the reopening plan, I support most of its components as it is a very comprehensive and well thought out plan. But there is one issue I would like to address. I am concerned that the NPS reopening plan strongly recommends but does not require face masks for students in stage yellow of the ELPHD dial. When I'm glad to see that teachers will be required to wear masks in this stage, I'm disappointed that the plan does not require students to wear masks throughout the school day, or at a bare minimum when they are passing in the halls or using common spaces outside of the classroom. I know there are challenges on many fronts to a mask requirement, such as enforcement, education, and the fact that despite the science in support of them, masks have become a political issue. The most recent science indicates that one of the safest ways to return to some semblance of normal is to wear masks. As a school district, we must do everything reasonably possible to keep our students, teachers, and staff safe, whether it is politically popular or not. I know that face mask enforcement may be difficult at times, but that does not seem like an adequate reason to not try. As I said, we make all kinds of difficult decisions because we are doing what's best for our students and teachers. This is no different. If people want students to be in school, then requiring students to wear masks when it is feasible is one way to make sure that happens. I'm glad teachers will be wearing masks, but I worry that it is not enough because they will spend all day in rooms with students who may not be wearing them. While early evidence indicates that younger people do not get as sick from the virus, our teachers will bear the brunt of this no mask decision. Our teachers are crucial to providing a high-quality learning experience for our students, and I want to make sure we do everything possible to support them in their role and keep them safe. Not only do we care about our teachers and their health, but we do not have the capacity to make teachers out sick at once. I also fear that without a mask requirement, many students who would like to wear masks won't, especially in high school. If we do not mandate masks, then students are at the mercy of what their peers decide is cool or uncool. fashionable or unfashionable. Many students may feel influenced by social norms not to wear a mask, even if they wish to. We are putting teenagers who are already in a difficult social landscape in a position where they have to choose to possibly go against the majority and be willing to deal with the consequences to themselves, their teachers, or their families. We all want to believe that students and families will have the resolve to do what they need to do to stay safe despite the possible backlash. But as anyone who's been in the minority in one situation or another understands, it's not that simple. Masks can help us successfully function in a world without a vaccine. More and more companies require patrons and employees to wear face masks because cases across our country are surging, and masks are another strategy to keep people safe and businesses open. I think schools can follow the same approach to the best of their ability, knowing that there are certainly exceptions to the use of face masks for certain groups of students, teachers, and circumstances. If we are unable to reach an agreement to require masks, perhaps there's a compromise for the times and places where students are in shared spaces and probably in the closest contact with each other and teachers. Even some mask usage helps contain the spread. Nebraska is fortunate that our low population density has kept our case counts relatively low. However, the virus is still in our community, and I believe we should take the necessary precautions to prevent people from getting sick. Yes, there will be people who will not agree with our decision regarding masks, no matter which way we go. But we don't make decisions to be popular or to avoid a negative response. We make decisions to provide the best educational experience possible for our students and teachers. Thanks for hearing my perspective. I'm not allowed to speak since I'm not physically present, so I cannot respond to your comments or answer any questions. I trust that you will have a robust discussion and put a comprehensive plan forward for reopening. Thank you for all you do. As I said before, it is truly a pleasure to serve on the board and work with all of you. Tammy Day. Very well done.
Okay, that concludes our presentation to the board regarding our recommendations. If there are any questions for the committee, we could entertain those. Otherwise, I would suggest that we move to the action item, and you have your discussion about our plan as part of the action item.
I would just like to make a quick comment to the committee and all those involved in putting together this extremely comprehensive plan. I don't believe in never say never, but I really can't see anything the committee, the administration, and the staff have missed in just about any kind of what-if scenario. So my kudos and applause to the committee and the administration and staff for all of their hard work in putting this together. It's obvious that first and foremost, I think once again, Norfolk Public School District is going to be the example in such a comprehensive plan. So thank you for all of your work and efforts. Very much appreciated.
Okay, we are going to go to 3.1, discuss, consider, and take action to adopt the COVID-19 Return to School Plan developed by the COVID-19 Return to School Planning Committee. Discussion before we take a vote?
I'll make a motion we approve the plan as presented.
I will second.
Okay, we have a motion by Bob and a second by Arnie. Is there discussion?
I agree with Tammy. I appreciate the tremendous amount of work that has gone into putting together a comprehensive plan. But just as Dr. Thompson said, NDE says when you are in yellow that people should be wearing masks when feasible. To me, that says required when feasible. Tammy also pointed out, that we want our students to be as safe as possible. This is a community effort, right? I mean, everybody in the community needs to be working as diligently as possible to reduce the cases. I think you see the community taking steps to say to people, when you're in public, you need to have a mask on. If you think about the businesses in the last week who have started requiring masks, that's a signal that our community is taking some of those steps. Also, as Dr. Thompson mentioned, everybody is saying masks are essential, but nobody will say they're required. If they're essential, to me that means they are required. I think we need to have the courage when we're in yellow to say students and teachers, whenever it's feasible, need to be wearing masks. That may mean more work, that may mean more classroom management, but we have lots of really smart, innovative people in our district who can figure out how to help students wear masks, especially at times when they are not in a six foot space for social distancing. So I would really like to see us change yellow to have yellow also say masks are required.
Okay. This is a hard discussion because I know we're in many different places. And as we sit here right now, there are very few masks, but at the same time, we're 6 feet apart. And I'm going to steal this idea from my son-in-law, Bill LaFleur, who has an idea for when we have younger kids in classrooms. And it's something you might like and something you might not, but I think some of our concern is a young second grader or first grader or kindergartner keeping the mask on. So if there's an opportunity when the kids are all sitting at their desks, or this can be at the high school too, and so you have a symbol like I'm going to get deep, like a square, a circle, a star on desks to give a mask break. Has anybody in this room ever worn a mask for 8 hours? I have not. I never have. And I get it that the kids won't have to do that because they'll have a lunch break. So what will they do? 4 hours and then 4 hours? But that's a long time. That is, and for our teachers too. So is there a way, I definitely believe in masks, but is there a way, okay, so like if you're all sitting there and the kids are not moving, could we have a mask break? Okay, if you're at this, if you're in this place, because we'll be 6 feet apart, okay, you get a mask break. Take your mask off for 10 minutes. And then the next kiddo, so like, it'd be like every other, are you picturing this? Am I doing an okay job? I just think that that's a concern of a lot of people from what I've heard. It's not that they're against masks, they're against the time, that it's a long time for somebody to be in a mask. So I'm just putting that out there.
If masks were required, we would have to include mask breaks at all levels. Teachers would have them in their play period and at lunch, and we would have to figure out when that would be provided for students. So that would be a part of our job.
Thank you. I've never heard a mask break at all mentioned. Well, there you go. Bob.
I think when we're looking at parsing feasible and strongly recommended, we're getting into a lot of detail that is going to make it very hard for classroom management. Because what is feasible, and how does this work? I really like the language that public health has come forward for us with strongly recommended. I think it sets the tone for what our expectation is. I think with the communication plan that was laid out with the posters in the classroom, one of them talked about wearing a mask. I think it is important that as leaders, our teachers demonstrate that wearing a mask is appropriate, but I don't know that mandating masks in our classrooms for our students is going to provide the best educational outcome, which is our goal for this.
I just feel like we need to clarify, because we're talking about this in some respects as all or none. We are saying masks are required when we are in orange, right? So it's a situation where you have to decide what are the conditions that require, right? At what point do you go from we want you to wear this, to you need to wear it for your own safety. And that's not an easy decision to make. But I think if we move into orange, you're going to have the same situations, Arnie, that you're talking about anyway, because masks will
Absolutely,
be
and
on.
in orange, we've taken the drastic reduction of students are in school 40% of the week in the building. So there is a significant threat in orange that does not exist in yellow. And in that case, where that significant threat has been raised and public health has told us, you guys need to be taking bigger action because our community is having bigger issues, we need to up our requirements.
I agree with Arnie for the most part. One of Tammy's paragraphs where it said we make the decisions to provide the best educational experience possible for our students and teachers. I 100% agree with that. I, however, disagree that that is done with a mandatory mask measure. You're going to decrease the amount of learning our students are receiving if you do a mandatory mask, especially in the younger grades, K4, 5, 6. Sandy said it, no one's used to wearing it 8 hours a day. Kids are going to be fidgeting with it and playing with it. There's going to be no effective learning being done in that classroom because of that very instance. While I do believe that there is a place for masks, I do not believe in making it mandatory.
Even at the orange level, Bruce?
Okay, the orange level I am okay with.
Okay.
I'm talking
I just
about,
want clarification.
I'm talking
Yeah.
about stepping up the yellow level to match orange. Thank you for asking that. I will I will make that step clear, but I am actually in favor of yellow being strongly recommended for staff and students.
I would agree with Bruce in that respect. There are some health issues regarding wearing masks for an extended period of time, causing headaches and other kind of medical things with students. Some of them literally, some of the staff as well, literally cannot wear a mask for health reasons. So I don't feel like that we should force them to do so. And as somebody said, we do have a wonderful staff, highly intelligent, motivated. They do, and we as a school board have always done and will always do what's best for our kids. We have never, ever not done that. Never. But I think it's appropriate for our staff and our students to have time. I think they're smart enough to figure out when they should and can wear masks, and there are times when they don't have to. We have the plastic thing here. How often and how many of those can we use to separate kids if we can't wear masks? How can we use those with staff members? Can they have those too, to separate them from kids and not have to wear masks? I just don't think that it's appropriate for us to mandate masks for students and staff at the yellow level. Orange level, okay.
And my perspective is I would prefer that we err on the side of caution in terms of keeping people safe. I think you can define feasible, right, Arnie? I mean, I think anything that you talk about has to be operationalized. Even like saying that they are required, well, we've said they're required, but that doesn't mean for 8 hours a day when we're in orange. So I guess my perspective is if we require masks in yellow, that may help keep us from ever having to get to orange, as long as we have a community that is also being cautious.
So I want to make sure everybody is clear that when we go to vote for this, if you vote yes right now, you're voting that it is only strongly recommended. If you vote no, then you're voting that you feel that the mask issue needs to be enforced at all times. so that nobody's unclear on which way you're voting. So if we go to this, we're going to vote just as the plan was presented, and that's presented with strongly recommended in yellow. And if it is, so does everybody understand? Staff, but the whole thing is staff required as well. We haven't talked about that. How does everybody feel about the staff requirement?
I personally am on board with the staff requirement. To me, it's the same as at my place of work, we require certain PPE, personal protective equipment. And in this situation, for the staff, I'm comfortable with recommending it. I would be okay with strongly recommended, but as the committee came out, I really am putting a lot of weight into what this committee said. And with a 96+% agreement of the committee on this recommendation, I really am putting a lot of that back to this group who put all that work in, and I appreciate the work they've done, and I appreciate the recommendation from this, because this is not an easy issue, and unfortunately, a cotton mask has become a political issue, and it shouldn't be.
And I talked to a lot of staff too, and they weren't loving wearing their mask, but they said, we'll do it. You know, they didn't hate it, they didn't love it, but they know the reason for it, and I haven't seen a lot of pushback on that. And then if there is a medical reason, they can go to a doctor and get a medical, form for that. Right now, the way it stands, required for teachers, strongly recommended for students in green and yellow, and then required in orange. That's what we're voting on right now until we finish, but we still have discussion time. So I just want to make sure it's clear so we all know which way we're going on that.
And a second motion could be made after this one if it's necessary.
If it doesn't
If
pass.
I would entertain, if I would entertain an amendment to my motion regarding the requirement of staff.
I think we have to vote on the first motion first, correct? Or since you made it, can we change it?
The person who made the motion can amend their motion.
Okay, so what is your amendment, Bob?
I wonder if we shouldn't, we're lumping four colors into one vote, and the way you stated your opinion on the outcome of that vote is not the way I interpreted the vote at all.
That's why we needed to make
So-
sure we were all the same on what we're
Right.
voting.
So but the way you said, if you vote no, you're in favor of more. I'm not voting yes on mandatory at yellow and strongly recommend the way it's written.
No, the way it's written is strongly recommend in yellow, and mandated orange. It's the way it's written right now.
Students.
Students, we're talking students. It's strongly recommend for students and not mandated until orange.
But it's
He would like it.
required, it's required for staff at yellow.
Required for staff all the time. When we go back to school right now, it's required for all staff.
Not in green.
Not in green, sorry, my bad. Okay. Are we clear on what we're saying right now?
No, I don't think we
Here,
are.
let me
That's
just
why I
read the
wondered if we
statement.
should go color by color.
Correct.
Yes, it's the entire plan, and the yellow tier says masks will be strongly recommended for students and required for staff. That's what's on the table.
That was Bob's motion.
To approve the plan as presented.
Okay.
So in my opinion, a vote no is not for increased protection.
A vote. So you could vote no because you don't want that. Patty could vote no because she wants it stronger, and you're both voting for different reasons, but you're both voting no. So everybody understands that. And a vote yes is just exactly as presented, as Dr. Thompson said, no mask requirement at green, yellow, orange, and red, yellow and orange for teachers, and yellow only recommended for students, and orange required. Want to vote, or do you want to keep talking about
I call for the question.
Pardon? Call for the vote?
Question, yes, let's take a vote on this one, and if there's a second motion, so be it.
Okay.
You're still, excuse me, you're still spinning. Arnie, have you registered that you voted yet? Motion carried 3-2.
Does it show on the screen what the votes were? If not, okay, all right, very good.
Okay, thank you, Mary.
Now, if you wanted to have another motion to extend not requiring staff to have masks at the yellow level, is that possible?
We just passed it. We can't amend it, we just voted on it
The
and
plan
it
has
passed.
been passed.
Well, again, I thank everybody for all their hard work. It's a really tough decision, and we're all just hoping and wanting what's best for our teachers, our staff, our students, and the best education our public schools can give them in a safe environment. So that's what we're going forward with. 3.2, discuss, consider, and take action to approve a modified 2020-21 school calendar. Dr. Thompson.
Thank you. Building administrators have come to me and requested that we only have half of our students attend school on the first day, Thursday, August 13th, and the other half attend on Friday, August 14th, so that we can provide intense training and practice regarding our new procedures and protocols. As you have seen, they are quite extensive. This would give us the opportunity to practice those with less students before we have everybody back, and possibly make some tweaks and changes to them if necessary before we have our entire buildings full. If that is passed, then all students would attend on Monday, August 17th.
This would be on the A-B, same as what you do for Orange.
Yes, we would actually be practicing the same groupings that we would do if we go to the Orange level, so we get to see how that works as well.
I'll make a motion to approve the modified 2020-2021 school calendar.
I will second that.
I have a motion by Patty and a second by Arnie. Is there any discussion?
I am greatly in favor of this. I think Dr. Thompson's email to the board this week telling us that she had overwhelming support from her admin team to do this speaks volumes, because my guess is they're doing that not just their own opinions, but they've heard that from their staff, that this is what the staff needs. I think school startup this year is going to be different than it's ever been. So every advantage we can give our staff and our students to get going and get learning going again, I'm all in favor of. So thank you to the staff for coming up with a plan that's going to result in the best possible success.
Please vote.
Motion carried 5-0.
Thank you, Mary. Well, that wasn't bad. This almost ends our meeting. The next meeting will be, it doesn't have it on here, but no, that's okay. But we do need to go into executive session to discuss staff compensation as leave as needed to protect the interest of the district. I need a motion to go into executive session.
Before we do that, Madam President, just for the record, I indicated that I would be in favor of not requiring teachers to wear masks at the yellow level. I sense I'm not the only one who felt that way. would like you and the president to look at Robert's Rules of Orders regarding amendments to motions and when they cannot occur. I don't need it now.
Well, I
I'd
think
like that to be a consideration at the next regular scheduled school board
I
meeting.
think we'd want to do it now because school will be starting. I
Well,
think
you-
we
you
should
can-
not adjourn
it's-
yet.
With teachers, it's not a matter of life and death, but if you want to look at it now, that'd be okay with me.
If I may interject, in Robert's Rule of Order, if you were to amend the original motion, it happens before you approve the entire first motion. So you would have needed to go back and amend the original motion, vote on the amendment, and then reconvene and vote on what the new motion.
That is absolutely correct. Before you can have discussion according to Robert's Rules of Order, you first have to make a motion to adopt whatever you're going to adopt, in this case, the rule, which I did, and that was seconded, which then provided the board the opportunity for discussion and to amend that motion. I think that's the way it works. It used to be. If everybody's comfortable where we're at, I guess I'm not going to ask you looking at it over.
Our next board meeting is August 10th. It's actually before students return to the buildings on the 13th.
Teachers come back on what date?
The 10th.
The 10th. I would be happy to put that on the agenda if that's what you'd like, Bob. Okay. Yes, we need a motion for executive.
We move into executive session to discuss staff compensation and leave as needed to protect the interest of the district.
I'll second the motion.
Motion by Arnie, second by Patty. Any discussion? Please vote.
Motion carried 5-0.
Thank you, Mary. Okay, we're going to go into executive session, but no decisions will be made when we come back, so if you'd like to leave, go. Thank you for coming. I think we have 6 feet here. We will take a 10-minute break before we go back in.